to know that the roots or the solutions are where the graph crosses the x-axis. So it says these problems, so the problems that we're going to do today involve the areas of rectangles, missing sides of right triangles, as well as consecutive integers. These types of problems are calculator inactive on your EOC. These types of problems are calculator inactive. I want everyone to pick their heads up. Everybody, heads up off your desk. Cameron, come on, pick your head up. All right. So the length of a rectangle is 11 inches longer than its width. What should we do first? Anytime we have a question about a shape, what should we do? Yes, I think we should sketch the shape. So I want everyone to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to label my sides. One of them is going to get W for the width. The other one is going to get a cursive L for the length. Okay, it says the length is 11 inches longer than the width. The length is, the word is means equals to in math. So L equals, how do I show 11 inches longer than the width? W plus 11. All right, so right here on my label for the length, I'm going to write my length is W plus 11. It says the area of the rectangle is 80. The area equals 80. Well, I don't know why I wrote 88. 80 square inches. So 80 square inches. How do I find the area of a rectangle? Yeah. I know that the area of a rectangle is the length times the width. So let's do that. 80, which is the area, equals the length times the width. W plus 11. And I really did the width times the length, but I just tried to put the monomial outside of the binomial. How do I solve this? So this is the equation that we have to write. This is your equation. How do you solve it? Well, what do we have to do before we can factor it? Yeah. You have to set it equal to 0. Well, let's distribute the W and then set it equal to 0. So you have to distribute and set it equal to 0. Because remember, you can't solve a quadratic unless it equals 0. Because the solution is the x-intercept. And the x-intercept happens when y equals 0. So you have to set it equal to 0. So the first thing that we're going to do is distribute. So I'm going to show my work right over here. 80 equals W times W plus 11. When I distribute, what do I get? W squared plus what? Yes, plus 11W. Okay, I have to set this equal to 0, meaning what? What do I have to subtract from both sides? I have to subtract 80 from both sides. So when I do that, I have 0 equals W squared plus 11W minus 80. This is what I'm going to factor. Now I can factor this. So let's think about it. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me negative 80, that when I add them, I get a positive 11. Well, it ends in 0. I would start, what's 80 divided by 0? Not 0, sorry. It ends in 0 divided by 5. What's 80 divided by 5? I'm just going to do that off to the side. 5 will go into 80 how many times? Once with a 5. Let's see. 8 minus 5 is 3. Bring down my 0. 16. So if I take a positive 16 times a negative 5, I'll get negative 80. And is 16 minus 5, 11? Those are my two factors. 0 equals x plus 16 times x minus 5. All right, so now I need the solutions. So if my factor is positive, what is my solution? Negative. That means that x equals negative 16, or if my factor is negative, my solution is, or x equals positive 5. I want to ask you a question. X is the, I'm using x, but really our variable is w. So maybe I should put a w in here. Maybe that'll help you guys with your thinking, because we're really using the variable w. So I'm going to write w, w, w. So w, my width equals negative 16. What does that look like? What does a width of negative 16 inches look like? Can you take your ruler and go measure something and have it be negative 16 inches? Why not? Because it's not on the ruler, right? You can't measure something that has negative dimensions, right? Okay, you don't have negative dimensions. So does this answer make sense? Is this negative 16 a possibility? No, it doesn't make any sense, so you need to cross it out. This answer doesn't work. Does not make sense. Not possible. So the only possible answer is that my width is 5 inches. So I need to find both the length, the width, and the perimeter. So let's talk about my length. If my width is 5 inches, what is my length? It's 16 inches. So L equals 16 inches. And what about my perimeter? Well, do you guys remember how to find the perimeter? Perimeter is 2 times your length plus 2 times your width. So yeah, 2 times 16 plus 2 times 5, which is 32, plus 10, which means that my perimeter is 42 inches. So this is what you're solving for: your length, your width, and your perimeter. Your length, your width, and your perimeter. Here. Okay. The larger leg of a right triangle is 3 centimeters longer than its smaller leg. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to draw a right triangle. Carly, if you can fix that again, that would be great. I want to draw a right triangle. How do I know if a triangle is right? How do I know if I have a right triangle? How do I know, looking at a picture, that it's a right triangle? Say that again. There's a 90-degree angle, meaning it has a box inside of it. Has a little box right there. That's how I know this is a right triangle. So when I think about a right triangle, these sides are labeled like this: A, B, and C. A and B are what we call the legs of the right triangle, and C is the hypotenuse. Do you guys remember that? You should remember that from 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Okay. A and B are the legs, and C is the hypotenuse. What formula, what famous theorem do we use to find the missing side of a right triangle? That's area. What am I writing here? What is this? Pythagorean theorem. What is that? Nope. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Yeah. So when you have a question about a triangle's missing sides, so you have a triangle that's missing a leg, a right triangle, you're going to have to use Pythagorean theorem. And it is specifically the right triangle. Yeah, you fill it out. I wanted you to fill it out. Can you do that? Yeah, it's already signed. Just fill it out, sweetheart. The time is 8:39, okay? Today is 8:15 and the time is 8:39. Thank you, Noah. Okay, so we're going to label our sides. So I'm going to start with a new drawing of a right triangle. And it says that the larger leg of the right triangle is 3 centimeters longer than the smaller leg. So these are my two legs. So if this is the smaller side, X, and this is the longer side, how do I show that this side is 3 centimeters more? How do I show that it's 3 centimeters more than the short side or the small side? Yeah, X plus 3. Okay. It says the hypotenuse is, that's this side right here. My hypotenuse is 6 centimeters longer than the smaller leg. So small leg plus 6. How many centimeters is the small leg? Well, we have to use the Pythagorean theorem. Remember that this is A, B, and C of my right triangle. Okay. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, the measurement of A is just X. So that's X squared. But the measurement of side B is X plus 3, the quantity squared, equals the measurement of C, which is X plus 6, the quantity squared. And we have to solve that. We have to solve that. So there are a couple of things that you need to remember. You need to remember that when you see something like X plus 3, the quantity squared, it really means X plus 3 times X plus 3. And when you see something like X plus 6, the quantity squared, that really means X plus 6 times X plus 6. So let's simplify. If I have X plus 3 times X plus 3, I need to distribute. X times X is, X times 3 is 3X. 3 times X is, and 3 times 3 is 9. So this becomes X squared plus all of this stuff. X squared, I'm going to simplify. 3X plus 3X is plus 6X plus 9. So we've taken care of the left side. Now we have to do this problem. X times X is X squared. X times 6 is 6 times X is, and 6 times 6 is. Can we combine these two? So I get X squared, and 6 plus 6 is 12X plus 36. Let's just combine all of our like terms first in this equation. What can I combine on the left side? Yeah, so what do I have? I really have 2X squared plus 6X plus 9 equals X squared plus 12X minus 36. Sorry, it's not minus, it's plus 36. So the only way that I can solve that is to set it equal to 0. That means I have to take everything from one side and move it to the other side. But I want my leading coefficient to be positive. So what side am I moving away? Am I going to move the right side to the left or the left side to the right? Well, which one should I subtract from so that way the X squared is positive? Should I take X squared minus 2X squared or 2X squared minus X squared? Yeah. Cameron, I don't know how you're learning anything with your eyes closed. X squared minus 12X minus 36. You're doing that on both sides. Minus X squared minus 12X minus 36. 2X squared minus 1X squared is just that, X squared. 6 minus 12 is negative 6. So I have negative 6x. And 9 minus 36 is negative 27 equals 0. I am now at the point where I can factor. I need to know what two numbers multiply together to give me negative 27, that when I add them, I get negative 6. What two numbers multiply together to give me negative 27, that when I add them, I get negative 6? Negative 9 and positive 3. So this factors into x. So 0 equals x minus 9 times x plus 3. Well, if my factor x minus 9 is x minus 9, what is the solution or the root? Remember that the factor and the root are opposite. So if the factor is x minus 9, what is the root? What's the opposite of x? What is the opposite of negative 9? Positive 9, not 6. If x plus 3 is a factor, what is the root? What is the opposite of plus 3? Negative 3. You guys, where am I getting this information from? Where is this coming from? I'm taking x minus 9 and setting it equal to 0. Add 9 to both sides. This was everything that you did on Thursday and Friday. So x equals positive 9. That's exactly what you got. Taking x plus 3 and setting it equal to 0. This is your zero product rule, right? Zero product law. X equals negative 3. That's just what you're doing. We started with this and we said, hey, this is no different than what we did all last week. We said if the factor is positive, the root is negative. They are opposites of each other. That's it. They're just opposites. So is it possible for your right triangle to have a side measuring negative 3? Can one of the sides of the triangle be negative 3? No, it can't. This is not possible. So the only possible measure that you can use is 9. So that means that x equals 9. That means your next side, 9 plus 3, well, that's 12. And then 9 plus 6 is 15. Your homework is posted, honey. So your side measures of your triangle are 9, 12, and 15. It asks you, what is the measurement of the smallest side? The small side is 9 centimeters. Small side is 9 centimeters. Okay. Let me look at your homework for a second. Example number 3. Example number 3. I want someone to read that. You right? Will you read that for me? Do you mind?
One side of the square is increased by 1, and another is on the other side increased by 2. A rectangle is formed with an area of 2 less than twice the area of the square. Find the length of the side of the square.
Okay. So what sketch should we start with? A square. I'm going to start with a square. What do I know about the square? What's one thing I know about a square? Say that again. Yeah, it's equal on all sides. All sides have the same measure, right? So I don't know what they are, but I'm going to call them both x. Okay. What does it say that we're doing to one side of the square? So one side of my square is growing by 1 unit. So one side is growing by 1 unit. So this measurement is now going to be x plus 1. What's happening to the other side of my square? Yeah, it's increased by 2. So this side is now x plus 2. So I'm going to put a plus 2 over here, and I put a 1 right here. Do you guys see that? I'm increasing it, how I'm making it grow over there. So it says that once you do that, once you increase it, you have a rectangle, and the area of the rectangle, how do I find the area of the rectangle? How do I find the area of a rectangle? Okay, length times width. What are the length and the width of my rectangle? So I'm going to take x plus 2 times x plus 1. So that's the area of my rectangle. It says that the area of the rectangle is 2 less than, so this whole thing that we just did, the x plus 2 times the x plus 1 is, that's a equal sign, 2 less than twice the area of the square. How do I find the area of the square? Well, isn't the area of the square just x times x, which is x squared, right? So how do I show that I need 2 less than twice the area of the square? How do I show 2 less than twice the area of the square? 2 less than twice the area of the square. So twice the area of the square minus 2. Do you see that? That's our equation. Okay, so what are we going to do first? We got to do some foiling or distributing, right? We have to figure out what this is. So x times x. Jansen, what is x times x? X squared. X times 1. Seamus, x times 1 is? X times 1 is? Good. 2 times x. Kimber, 2 times x is? 2x. And 2 times 1. Tayana, 2 times 1 is? 2. Equals the stuff on the right. 2x squared minus 2. Okay, let's simplify the left side. What are the things that I can combine as like terms? Okay, so x squared plus 1x and 2x is 3x plus 2 equals 2x squared minus 2. I have to solve this, and the only way to solve is to factor, but I have to set it equal to 0 first. So am I going to take everything from the left? Like, how am I going to subtract? Am I moving the stuff that's on the left over to the right, or the stuff on the right over to the left? What do you think, Cameron? Which one is going to give you a leading coefficient that's positive? How about you stand up? I know. Stand up. X squared minus 3x minus 2. We're going to do that on both sides. Minus x squared minus 3x minus 2. So x squared minus x squared, those cancel out, cancel out, cancel out. 0 equals, what is 2x squared minus 1x squared? What's 2x squared minus 1x squared? Yeah, just 1x squared. There is no negative, like there's no x term, so this negative 3 comes down by itself, this negative 3x. And negative 2 combined with negative 2 gives me negative 4. So I'm looking for two numbers. I'm looking for two numbers that when I multiply them together, I get a negative 4, that when I add them, I get a negative 3. Two numbers that when I multiply together, I get a negative 4, and when I add them, I get a negative 3. I'm looking for a product of negative 4. You're close. Yeah, negative 4 and positive 1. Good job. So that means 0 equals x minus 4 times x plus 1. So the solution, well, if x minus 4 equals 0, what is x? What is the opposite of negative 4? Positive 4. If x plus 1 equals 0, what is the opposite of positive 1? Those are my two solutions. Is it possible for this square right here, this measurement that we drew on our square, to be negative 1? What's negative 1 look like for a measurement of a side? This is a third one we've done with a negative. Can we have a negative dimension on a square or a rectangle? No, can't be possible. So let's see. X is 4. So the area of my square is 16. We know that because 4 times 4 is 16. But what about my rectangle? What are the measurements of my rectangle? Well, the length, which we said was x plus 2, is actually what? What is x plus 2 if x is 4? 6. And our units were inches, right? 80. Did we get any units? No. Okay. So the length is 6. And what about the width? X plus 1 is what? 5. Okay. So the real question was, what is the side of the square? Well, the side of the square is 4. But what's everything else? The rectangle is 5 by 6. All right, we're going to do one more. I'm skipping the consecutive integers. I'm skipping those. We're going to have to do that tomorrow. We're going to have to push everything back. This is just, we're not ready. So actually, no, we're going to skip all the consecutive integers. So we're done with our notes. Here's what I want to do. I want you to look at your homework. Go to your homework. So question 1 has to do with the missing side of a right triangle. The missing side of a right triangle. So I'm going to draw a right triangle and I want someone to tell me, how did we label our sides if we have a right triangle? How do we know? What are the sides called? A, B, and C. Which one is A, B, and which one is C? Yeah, A and B make the right angle. Good job, Zan. A and B make the right angle. C is always opposite the right angle. Okay? It's called the hypotenuse, right? It's the longer side. What formula do we use to solve this? Yeah, we have to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it says one side of the right triangle is 2 centimeters shorter than the hypotenuse. So what measure do you want to give the hypotenuse? One side is 2 centimeters shorter than the hypotenuse and 7 centimeters longer than the third side. Hang on, 7 centimeters longer than the third side. So if this side is, if this is, skip that one for a second. I have to think about it. Don't do that one. Skip number 1. Go to number 2. You have a question about the area of a square and the perimeter of a square. So let's talk about the area of a square. How do I find the area of a square? We just did this. What's the area of a square? Yeah, if we call it side, s squared, or if we call the measurements x, we just know that we're taking both sides and squaring it, right? Because these are the same. So the area of a square is x times x, which is x squared. What about the perimeter of a square? 4x. Good job. So it says the area of a square. So what's the formula or the equation or the variable term that we're using for area of a square? So how do I represent the area of the square? What is the area of the square? You just said it. What is the area of the square? So x squared is, what does the word is means in math? Equals 21 more than the perimeter. How do I show 21 more than the perimeter? Well, what is the perimeter? So 21 plus 4x. How are you going to solve that? You have to set it equal to 0. So you have to move all of this stuff over to the other side. Okay? That's your hint for number 2. Let's look at number 3. Number 3 is about a what? A rectangle. What should we do first? Say again. Yeah, draw a rectangle. One of your sides is L for your length. One of your sides is W for your width. So it says the width of the rectangle is, what does that mean? W equals 7 inches shorter than the length. How do I show 7 inches shorter than the length? L minus W, or minus 7, sorry, yeah. So W is L minus 7. So what is the area of the rectangle? Well, it's this times this. So it's the length times the length minus 7. And what does the area equal? Well, the area equals 78. This is just like question number 1, I think, from our notes. It's just like question number 1 from our notes. So right now you're going to do numbers 2 and 3, and I think that we can do number 4. Go to question number 4. So you're going to do 2, 3, and 4. It says the length of a rectangle is 5 times its width. What should I do first, Ashton? The length of a rectangle is 5 times its width. What's the first thing I should do? Yeah, I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to label my sides. One is W and one is L. So it says the length is, so L equals, how do I show 5 times its width? 5 times its width. 5W, right? So W is just W, but L is 5W. Do you guys see that? Okay. So what is the area of this rectangle right now? What is the area of this rectangle right here? This one. Well, the area of the green rectangle is the length times the width. So what does that look like? What is my length times my width? What does that become? Guys, what is 5W times W? 5W squared. Okay, so that's this area right here, 5W squared. Now it says we're doing something. It says, hey, if we take the length of that rectangle, which we know to be 5W, and we decrease it by 3, we decrease it by what? 3. And the width, which is W, is decreased by 1. The new area is 24. So 5W minus 3 times W minus 1 is 24. How are we going to solve that? Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is FOIL. So first, you're going to FOIL or distribute. Then you have to set it equal to 0, and then you have to factor. When you get your solutions, it's not asking you for the dimensions of this new rectangle. It doesn't ask about this. What's it asking for? It's asking you to find the dimensions of the original. It wants to know what W and L are of the original rectangle. Okay, so you just have 3 questions, 2, 3, and 4. 3 questions, 2, 3, and 4. That's what I've